The sun has left and forgotten me. It's dark, I cannot see. Why does this rain pour down?
Your stories don't define you, but how you tell them will. Hi, I'm Sarah Elkins, your host and chief story maker at Elkins Consulting. I like to describe myself as a story maker because I've learned that every interaction is an opportunity for a story. Some are good, some are learning opportunities, some are painful. But every time when we are present in our lives, we make stories that we can share later. And the really important part of that is making sure whatever we're doing is in alignment with our values. I love to step out of my comfort zone, even though it's uncomfortable. And one of the things that I did many years ago to step out of my comfort zone was I hosted a conference, a summit called No Longer Virtual. I did it 8 times. 2026, we're taking a break from it, but the first one was in February of 2017 in Atlanta, Georgia. And today's guest is one of the people that attended that event, the very first No Longer Virtual. And I really connected with him. Cory was quiet. He was there with a colleague. I wasn't 100% sure that he was comfortable speaking up with his colleague there. And, but there was a connection there. And I am so grateful that we kept it up after all these years. And now he is working on a project that listeners, you will know immediately when you hear what it's called, that it is near and dear to my heart. He calls it Eat Your Feelings. And it's not about eating to deal with stress. It's about coming together over a meal to talk about our feelings. And I'm so happy to welcome him to the show. Cory Brown, thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm glad to be here. Glad to be here. Thank you for that introduction. Very nice.
It was such a special event. There were 23 of us in the room for the first time ever doing this event. And everyone paid to be there because I didn't have money. And I continue to encourage people to host sessions that they hadn't done before. It's kind of experimental. And these were people from all over the country in Canada, all over the US and Canada, that had mostly never met before in person, all because we met on LinkedIn. It was incredible. And I was so glad you were part of it.
Well, I was glad to be there. I know you said I was quiet, and I think it's a journey that I've taken, not since then. I think that was part of it, where you have to learn how to be comfortable in your own skin, and you have to learn like where you fit in space, in a room, at
Absolutely.
A conference, like whatever it is. But
what is my role here? How can I contribute?
That's right.
Yeah. So when you think back at that time, I'm going to alter the beginning of this episode because it's been such a long time we've spoken. And I think this will lead us in very well to what we're going to be talking about today, which, so I'm curious about that experience with you. Mm-hmm. One of the fondest memories I have of that event was gathering together that evening to eat dinner together at that Chinese restaurant. Were you there with us that night?
Probably. My short-term memory is
short-term
memories.
2017. Okay, so here's what I remember. We had spent all day together, and it was intense. And people left for lunch and came back. I served lunch the second day, not the first day. And I was trying to leave room for the introverts. That's why I didn't plan for a lunch. I didn't plan for a dinner that night. But at the end of the day, it's like 6:00. Everybody's exhausted. We've been peopling all day long.
Yeah.
I actually went to my hotel room during the lunch break to decompress because even I needed that because I was hosting. But I remember at the end of it, I was giving the announcements, the housekeeping stuff about what to expect for the next day. And I said, so I got a recommendation from the employees here at the hotel. They said that there's this great little Chinese restaurant just about a block and a half away from here. So Bob and I, my husband and I, are going to go down there. And I thought I'd ask for a show of hands of anyone else who wants to join us so I can call them if it's going to be a larger group. Now, again, We've been together all day. There are 23 of us. I expected maybe 6 other people to raise their hands. Almost every hand in the room went up. They weren't done.
That has to feel nice.
It was extraordinary. Yeah. And then I remember, again, breaking bread together, right? We're sitting down at 2 long tables. This restaurant was so accommodating, shockingly accommodating. They offered separate bills for all of us, which was like, it was pretty amazing. I actually sent them a handwritten thank you note after the event to tell them how much I appreciated their accommodations. But when you think back at that event, what's something that does stand out for you, even if those specific parts don't? Is there a feeling that stands out for you? Why did you even, what made you do this?
Well, my colleague probably made me do it. But I think sometimes you need people in your life that will force you to get out of your comfort zone. I think all of us, or a lot of us, have that internal thing inside of us that wants to face challenges. I do. Even as an introvert, I have something inside me that like tells me, no, you got to go after this, or that internal voice that pushes me. And I think one of the great things about that event was that there was challenge to it, but you constructed it in such a way where there was some safety, and in the years that have gone by now, we talk about like having safe spaces and, all these type of things. And I think that's the sign of a good host, right? Is being able to give a safe space. And in that context, I think you also wanted to challenge us. And I just remember the conversations from that day and like how maybe on the inside I was like, I'm like a little, I don't want to get up and talk about this, but like the moment forced it, right? It wasn't like, at gunpoint or anything like that, but it was like there was a soft pressure, soft enough to keep you from feeling like, I'm just not going to say anything today. I'll just listen. But hard enough to make you kind of get out there and, speak from your own experiences and your own heart. That's what I appreciate about events like that. And that's something I can remember to this day.
I love that. I love that because that's always the goal when I put together an event, is that environment of safety and allowing a level of vulnerability that may be uncomfortable but feels safe at the same time.
That was 8 years ago. Wow.
No, it was longer. It was 2017.
Yeah.
So
pre-COVID even.
9 years. Yeah. Ooh. So what have you mentioned that was kind of the early stages of becoming more comfortable in your skin. I feel the same way. That it was definitely in the early stages of realizing and embracing those things about myself that maybe I'd been uncomfortable with in the past, that I'd been criticized for in the past, that I was finally not just embracing, but sharing despite the criticism. So what has happened since then that has, that was the beginning of?
Well, let me say this. I would have been in my mid to late 30s then. So it was a second career for me to kind of go into the corporate space, go into the business space after having served in the military, over 16 and a half years, with half of that being on active duty and primarily all of it being after 9/11. I had a whole career by that point, a whole nother career. And I had spent enough time in that arena to get comfortable in my own skin. I knew who I was as a soldier. I knew who I was as a military leader. And somewhere around 2010, I kind of anchored in on my civilian career, like what that was going to be. I didn't know that I would, get out of the military in 2015, out of the National Guard. And I didn't really, I wasn't thinking too far ahead, but I did go into a world that I wasn't as accustomed to, where I was comfortable with all of my military brethren and all of the things that went along with being a soldier and doing all those type of things. when I started working for a business, and this was a small business at the time, I didn't know what, like I was learning all of those social cues, and there was a transitioning happening in my life. And even at that point, right, 2017, I think I was still trying to find myself. From an expertise level, I felt like what I did in my job, I was getting better at and more comfortable. But like some of the other stuff that comes with it, some of the like, how do I bring out any soft skills that I may have, or how do I learn to improve those soft skills? I was pretty new to that, because it was a whole different type of audience that I was kind of catering to with my work, and a whole different side. The people that I was meeting and interacting with were very different from the people that I had met and interacted with in my military career. So that's the background. I think it's important, right? Like it's different transitioning in that way, I think, and then being in your 30s and trying to figure stuff out than if you're like, coming out of college and in your 20s and trying to figure stuff out.
Right. Instead of defining your identity, you're redefining your identity. Mm-hmm. So going through that, it's basically another episode of that shift.
Yeah.
I think it's harder sometimes because you found an identity that was comfortable, and now you're finding a new identity and trying to get comfortable with it.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So when you think about your current work, this Eat Your Feelings mm-hmm. project, tell me a little bit about the one of those moments when you had already started the program and realized how important it was to you, or that it was something that you enjoyed, or it was satisfying. Do you have like a moment where you just went, oh wow, okay, this is right?
Not one moment, but you kind of get a feeling. Like mm-hmm. I tell people this all the time. For years, I've had these thoughts in my head and these feelings in my heart, and I could not put words behind them. I could not put actions or goals behind them. I just had it. It was there. In my corporate life, I had achieved a pretty good amount of success, and making the money or achieving status, or being in certain rooms and under certain situations, like that had run its course. And I had this longing in my heart, which I could define, which said, like, you need to be doing something more, like not for yourself either. It needs to be for other people. And so I had to spend years trying to figure out what that meant, and like trying different things and seeing if that would fill the hole or give me the purpose and satisfaction that I was looking for. So that was not a one moment kind of thing. It was like a series of moments that had to happen for me to learn from, to really be moving towards the place that I wanted to go. And Eat Your Feelings, as an example of that, like I knew I wanted to be talking more about mental health. I had a friend who died by suicide, a really close Army buddy of mine, that kind of pushed me over the limit of being satisfied with my corporate life, and said, I think you need to do something different. And sometimes I even think that it was like his voice inside me pushing me to say, finally, like, put your money where your mouth is, put your effort where your mouth is, like go after something different. And that's when I started to really, I think the important process there was really, could I take everything, this hurricane, a maelstrom inside me, and organize it in a way to put it on paper. I'm a very structured guy. I like structure. I like goals. But at the same time, I was trying to let that creative aspect of me kind of come out. And so trying to make sense of that was a journey, let me tell you. But when I was finally able to start putting it down on paper, and I was starting to find other people in my life who could help do that, things really, like, no pun intended, but things really started cooking, So it was like...
I love food puns, so...
Yeah.
So once you got started with it, were there a couple of particular times or situations that things went a little sideways and you had to take that step back and figure out what you wanted next with it?
Sure, you bet. I mean, it's not like I was, 10 years from now, I'm going to start a YouTube cooking show. Like, so I had no idea that that's where it was going to lead to. But I can remember stages, like, oh, I've got the, putting it into a concept that I could then tell other people about it. That was one big stage that took a lot, it seems, from me. And then having somebody tell me, we talk about this a lot. There was a point in time where I had a friend of mine who I'd been talking about this concept a lot. And we were at lunch one day, because we do like lunches together. And he challenged me in a way I wasn't expecting. Where he basically asked me, have you written any business plans or scripts or anything like to make this something that you could execute off of? He didn't say it quite so eloquently.
He said, shit or get off the pot. Right?
Basically, and I was like, no, I haven't done that. What's that? He's like, man, would you just shut the F up talking about it until you do? I will do anything I can to help you, but you got to take that step, man. You got to take it. And that was a learning experience. It still is. Like today, I'm learning something almost every day about like how production works, how post-production works, how YouTube works, how TikTok works, like things I never, if you'd asked me a couple years ago, like, how do you solve the TikTok algorithm? I would not have even thought to think about that. Right.
Right.
But like, there's so many things that go into making a cooking show that we're learning about. There's so many things going into like, how do I take my wants and needs here to talk about mental health and make sure we stay focused on that. Like that's a challenge. So there's definitely, I'm almost learning a whole new thing. I'm starting over again.
You are.
In some
you
ways.
Really are.
So,
but you're also using all of what you learned over the past 30 years to bring it to fruition. All of what you learned about your own mental health struggles, your own emotional well-being struggles, what you learned from your grief. I mean, you're bringing all that to the surface, and that is hard.
It is, but I think that's where we are today and the problems that we have, right? It is hard. And we need breakthroughs as a society. And I think it starts individually. Like we talk, there's no one size fits all solution or approach to this sort of thing. And I mean, we could get into the specifics and the vernacular about different mental health things and how the clinical approach, like all of that stuff is very important and it's all being done. But at the end of the day, there's like this human part of us because we are humans.
Right.
You're like, how can we just be there more for each other in a way that's actually constructive? How can we talk to each other about hard things, even though it's hard? Like the pros outweigh the cons to me because I've seen it in action. I've seen it work.
Exactly. I keep coming back to when my father was dying, one of my friends, John Gatchell, sent me a link to an interview with a doctor who specialized in death and dying. And he said, we need to shift this discussion away from death and dying as a medical experience to death and dying as a human experience. It has become a big medical experience. And I feel the same way about mental health. Like this is everyone at some point deals with mental health issues and emotional well-being issues, limits and frustrations. And when I think about what you're doing, I love that you just said each individual has to decide first. You can go to doctors and therapists all you want, but until you decide that something has to change, nothing's going to change. So tell me about an episode that you are especially enamored with, whether that's because it was hard or because it was meaningful or both.
Different episodes mean different things to me. Obviously the first one, right? That was I chose beef bourguignon because I'm a big fan of Julia Child.
I was just going to ask if that was her recipe. Of course it was.
But it's, it's a French classic. And part of cooking, especially when you're learning to cook, is it can be scary if you think about it in its complexity. But if you start doing it, you will find out how simple it actually is. Like sometimes because, and we picked two really French dishes with coq au vin and beef bourguignon, where there might be a lot of ingredients, but that doesn't mean that you can't do it, right? Especially with cooking, like cooking on the stove, cooking in a Dutch oven or on the grill or like that. Anything that's not baking, there's a little more room for error. So you don't have to be as afraid. It's not as like, it's got to be exactly 1/4 tablespoon,
Right.
There's some leeway there and it gives you some room for error. But the first one was very important to me because it was the first one. That was everything has come to fruition. I remember we filmed the first 4 episodes in one day.
Oh.
Yeah, we don't do that
Who ate
anymore.
all the food?
Well, we had a very hungry crew, and there was a lot of take home. But it's surreal when you have this idea in your head for so long, and then all of a sudden, like I showed up to the place. We had like an Airbnb. That's where we had it because I had the perfect kitchen for a cooking show. And I remember showing up, and I was the first person there when we were allowed to enter, and it was just the house and the kitchen. So I took all that in, but then the crew started showing up and setting up, and like once that was happening, I was like, oh my God, it's real. It's like we're really going to be doing this. And then you show up the next day when we're going to be filming, and you've got all your pots and pans there. You've got the crew there. You've got me and Sam are there, like our producers there, like everybody's there, and the food's all there. Like it was just hitting me wave after wave of just like this can't be happening, but yet here it is. So that first episode has that kind of meaning to me. It was the coming together in real life, like of all these things that I had been thinking about in my head for years, and trying to figure out how to make it happen.
Did you script it?
So we script it only as far as that it's a cooking show, so you have to get through a recipe.
Right.
We had themes and we have flow, right? But none of the dialogue is scripted. That's all just me and Sam, our chemistry, our relationship with each other. Both of us really being bought into what we're trying to do. Mm-hmm. And I don't think you could ever script Sam. Like he'll never be a scripted television person, but I think that's also some of the magic, right? Like that allows us to really be ourselves, and authenticity is a big thing, I think, when you're asking people to take some of the journeys with us that we wanted them to go on with us, and to do some of the things that we're telling them that will help them in their lives. We can't be, I don't think scripted would work.
Have you had your own breakthroughs on this show? Like, can you describe one of your moments where you were like, oh, holy shit, I just said that out loud?
Yeah. And there was you have to become comfortable. So obviously those first 4 episodes in that day, we got better with it because we had to become more comfortable with being in front of the camera and cooking in this way.
And knowing that this is an organic conversation and not trying to overthink it or find humor where there isn't any.
That's right. Mm-hmm. Or just, every now and then we'd have to reset, right. Like I can't believe you said that. Like we can't put that in a video, like things like that happen, obviously. But those first 4 taught us a lot. I really am proud of we filmed 10 more episodes. One of them we've released. It was a Christmas special, so we had to put that out. Mm-hmm. We have 9 episodes that have been filmed and we haven't released yet. And some of those, I can't tell you what it looks like from a final episode because we don't know. But I can remember some of the places we allowed ourselves to go because we had those experiences in the first 4. Like there's some high highs and some low lows. And I think that was one of the things people tell us as a takeaway. Like one moment I'm crying, one moment I'm laughing, one moment I'm just really listening, tuned into stories. A lot of things I think me and Sam have felt on the inside for a long time. Just like a lot of people, you keep it on the inside. And what we try to do is allow ourselves the space and the protection and the freedom to let that stuff out and to put it out in the world. There's that stage where you do it there in the room, in that kitchen, where we're saying it out loud to our cast and crew, or to our crew. And then it's a whole nother stage when you're like looking at the video that you're going to be uploading to YouTube.
Right.
And saying like, all right, do we want this to be out in the whole world? And so far, there've been a few moments where we're like, maybe we're not ready for that yet. Maybe we didn't do it the right way, the way that feels like it would matter. But 90% of the stuff that we've put together in that kitchen has, we felt like it's been ready for the real world, but it's also scary and challenging, but yeah, I mean, it's fulfilling.
Any of us that create heartfelt content, especially video, my podcast, the books that I've publishing that first book, it felt like that too. Like, am I really ready for this to go out into the world? Because it feels very vulnerable. I was going to ask you, about feedback, what you've heard from other people who have watched the episode, the Christmas one, but you've probably also sent out some of the others for feedback. But is there one interaction you've had from somebody, maybe on the crew, maybe it's Sam, that really made you realize that this is a real deal?
Yeah. Over the past few years, I've kind of let myself be okay with being emotional, because I was like, how can I help other people think about these stigmas and try to find these breakthroughs if I'm not willing to do it myself?
Yes.
So like, the Spider-Man movie, when he like stops the train and everybody's like picking him up and carrying, like that, I bawl my eyes out, when in Lonesome Dove, when, Gus is being carried back home in the coffin, like, man, I can't get through that. And I mean, those are some funny things, right? But like the Christmas special is a good example of this, where like I know Sam lost his mother unexpectedly in a car crash. And I think if people were watching the show, they will have picked up on that as well. But what you don't realize, what I didn't realize, was that you never know when that's going to hit.
Right.
Because that's what, like,
grief is weird.
Emotion and grief. And
sure.
And when, and the Christmas one is a good example of that. Like, all of a sudden, he's thinking about all the things that his son, who's 18 months, will never get to do with his mother because she's not here anymore. And he just lost it. And the perspective of that, is it comes out of nowhere. You have to deal with it. And we take that leap, like two burly dudes, being willing to break down on a TV show. But something that I express to people is when I'm in the editing process and watching that, I know it's coming, and it will still get me every time, because there's a lot of power in that emotion. I probably watched that episode 20 times, and 20 times, like, I got verklempt, like it touched
me. Yiddish word.
Yeah. My wife would be proud. So but I mean, that's what it's like. And there's several of those, like these second set of videos, like the other 9 that are coming out. There's a few of those moments where like we let what happens, because it gives us the opportunity to show you that you can be okay. And especially if you have people in your life that you can have there to support you and lean on, like, you will be okay. You got to go through these things. You can't stop it. There's no medicine that's going to stop any of the stages. There's no therapy that's going to stop. And, like, all of those things will still happen. But it doesn't have to be like this scary, I don't know what I'm going to do. Like, it's okay to have all those feelings.
Yeah,
it's okay to have all those feelings. You don't have to do it alone. You shouldn't do it alone.
Right.
Like having somebody there with you. I think having those moments in our show shows the power of like togetherness, We don't talk about the cook show being a cooking show so much as we talk about it being a place that just allows us to be together, because that's what really matters.
I was thinking about when I asked you that question about a moment where you realize, okay, this is worth it. This is why we're doing it. When my book was released, one of my clients sent a copy of my book to one of her good friends who was writing his memoir. And I will never forget getting a comment from him when I interviewed him on my podcast later on after he published his memoir. He came out as homosexual in Atlanta in the 70s. Yeah. And he had been engaged to a woman, his high school sweetheart, when he ended that and came out. And he's been with his husband for like 40 years now.
Yeah.
And he said that when he was doing one of the exercises in my book, he was thinking about a relationship he had in college that he was very angry about. And he said, as he worked through this exercise, and he named the page number, which is like, whoa, somebody really, really read my book. He named the page number. He said, that exercise, I did that, and it felt like 50 years of anger melted away.
Mm-hmm.
And I read that out loud to my husband. And my eyes welled up, and I thought, whatever else happens with this book, that's why I did it. For this one person to melt 50 years of anger away. And I anticipate that that is something that you guys will hear from, if you haven't already, from your crew and from visitors to your show, that they have that breakthrough of, I don't have to do this alone.
We do talk about that a little bit because you can get, as a creator, you can get caught up in all of the metrics, right? Like,
right.
Why did this video only get this many views, or why are those, especially on YouTube, because they like to show you that like versus dislike ratio. But you can get caught up in all those vanity metrics. And I know it's important because, like monetization, and if you're trying to get sponsors, you got, like I get all that business side. But we made a choice to say our number one goal is, can an episode or a clip or something, like for us, success is, can we make somebody's day better? Or can we make somebody who may really be fighting it and in the darkness, so you know what, I'm going to go one more day. This made me feel like I want to go one more day. Because I know those people. I've been with those people. I've been that person. And so that's what really matters to me. And I'll be honest, like as a human being, I've got to keep reminding myself of that, because it's very easy to get distracted, right? It's very easy to get distracted, to try to focus on what really doesn't matter so much, or compartmentalize it in a way where I can say, I need all this for the business side and to keep the show going and all that. But in my heart and my soul, these are the things that really matter. This is why I'm doing it. If I stopped doing it tomorrow and somebody came to me and said, I really needed that one video, it helped me out so much, then I would feel like this is worth it. Right. This is why I'm doing it.
Right. So eat your feelings. Our listeners, if they've heard any of the episodes of my podcast, over 400 episodes, they know that feeding people, nurturing people with food is my love language. That's my primary love language. And so when I think about our dining room table and all the hundreds of guests that have dined at our dining room table at my house in Montana, and the apartment that I shared with my husband before that in DC, and the apartment that I shared with my roommate before that, people know that, to me, breaking bread together, especially when it's healthy, lovingly created with ingredients that you know and recognize and can describe and pronounce, especially if you can go with like local ingredients. Right now, I'm really focused on using meat from a local ranch here in Montana that I know the owner of the ranch. I know how they treat their cows. I know the humanity and care. So our listeners know how I feel about feeding people and what that does for our communities. Tell me about your perspective on that. Eat Your Feelings came from somewhere, from your past, where you realize this is where people can really be vulnerable. They can laugh. They can find what matters to them and find the strength and the courage to go for one more day.
Yeah, I mean, why cooking? Why food? We get asked that a lot.
Well, I know why, but I want to hear it from you.
Sure. It comes up in conversation a lot. It's the vehicle that makes the most sense for me because of so many different reasons. So let's dive into those a little bit. The very first one, the one that's closest to my heart, is it keeps me close to my Nana, who has since passed away. But all of my fondest memories, or at least a very high percentage of them, revolve around that woman in the kitchen just doing magic stuff, Like no recipes, just heart, measuring with her heart. I can remember the big holidays, we'd come together, she'd cook a banger of a meal, like all of the Southern staples. And just about every time, everybody was there and they were enjoying it. And then we were like free from the world's pressures for an afternoon or an evening, And that was brought about because she cooked so well and the food was so good. And it just created this atmosphere and environment of like peace and happiness. I can remember, especially in the summer times when there was no school, we'd go over there and she would like almost every day just cook one of those big Southern breakfasts. So I got used to it. And like now, I know that there's things like I will never have them again. I will never have them again. I can never cook the biscuits like she did. I can't do a fish fry like she would. I can't cook fried chicken like she did. Nobody can,
Right.
Like I'm sure we all have somebody like that in our lives. But I try to remember through the cooking. But at the same time, I also acknowledge the fact that like, that's a missing part of my life that I wish I would have had more gratitude in the moment, or I wish I would have like learned from her much more in the moment. But that's probably the central piece to why I'm trying to do this through a cooking show. I have always liked to cook. I like to experiment. I'm a scientific guy, though. I like to measure and go by recipes and stuff. I like to find like what I think people would say are complex recipes and try them out. I say my success rate's pretty good. My wife could definitely remember one or two instances where I probably need to go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, but percentage-wise, you're
Yeah, I'm about now. I'd get in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
I'd get in the Hall of Fame. The other element here is that in my journey of trying to learn how to cook, like YouTube specifically has been a very big part of my adult life, because just like with almost anything, you can go to YouTube and find videos about it, right? And so I would watch a lot of YouTube cooking shows. And there was one guy in particular that really came to the forefront for me because I watched that show, The Bear. Have you watched The Bear on FX?
Yes. Oof, that's an intense show.
It is an intense show, and that's a whole nother conversation. But the guy on the show that's a real chef, Matty Matheson, he has a lot of cooking videos, and I watched a lot of his stuff even before The Bear. But The Bear made it more profound to me, I guess, because then I really started to pay attention, and this is where the light bulb really clicked. There's more to Matty Matheson than him cooking on his cooking shows.
Right.
If you start to look into his life and his story, there's so much there. Him getting over substance abuse, having to have an intervention, in order to keep his life, for one thing, and two, the woman of his life, who was his girlfriend and now his wife. Like he had to have these turnaround moments. And he's been through so many different kinds of experiences. And a lot of times you can, if you look hard enough, whether it's through like one of his podcast appearances or listen to him talk about being on the TV show or just like really paying attention to some of the things he's talking about on his YouTube videos, there's so much more under the hood. And so that made me think of what was possible with cooking as a vehicle and really wanting the foundation of that to be, can we talk about hard stuff? Can we help people get through hard things? Can we make it okay to not be okay? Can we make it okay to be okay? Right? Like that's kind of like the biggest influence and example that really led to Eat Your Feelings being what it is. So those are the two kind of lanes where food and cooking kind of put me in the arena to make the show. But yeah, I mean, I love cooking and I love, like you said, serving others is so important to us, right? Cooking being the love language that I can express my feelings for someone with the food that I can make them and how much joy I can get out of watching them enjoy it, and be fulfilled, even if it's just for that moment, right? There's so many, you start stacking those moments together and you have something real.
We've just come full circle, Cory.
I like because a good circle.
Me too. One of the first things you mentioned was that you hit that point in your career where you were doing well. You met the markers of success that you had set for yourself. And then the next thing was, how do I serve others? And you went through years trying to figure out what that would look like. And now we come full circle to feeding people, serves them, nurturing people, providing a safe place to feel that environment of warmth and love and nurturing and nourishing. And here we are.
Yeah, yeah.
What can we
I'd be remiss. I would be remiss if I didn't also talk about the unexpected joys, the things that you don't think about happening. We've taken this show from being a cooking show to being like a support network where, especially in my veteran community, right, we're trying to figure out by talking to organizations, like how can we show up for you? Whether that's through some sort of like a live event or can we host something for you that helps you fundraise, or can we, come in front of your members at a, like different ways that we can take our platform and go out, into the world with them, and try to impact more people. I love doing the show. I think the show's passive in a lot of ways, and that's fine. But it's also led to us now finding more active ways we can serve others. And we've done a few activations and, like seeing people enjoy food that we cook. Beautiful. Love it. Love it in the moment, especially. Mm-hmm. But like starting those conversations that somebody might have been holding on to that for months, years,
right?
And that gives them space to maybe like start to ask questions or start to wonder about what it could be like to find a therapist or to, really connect with somebody else in their life for the right reasons, for their own mental health. Like that's been really cool. And the show has really led to a lot of those opportunities.
Oh, I love that. And I'm hoping, Cory, that I'll get to interview Sam, your partner in crime here at the show, Eat Your Feelings, because I think his perspective will be different enough that it will make another great episode. Originally, listeners, we were intending to have both of them on this episode talking about the show, but now I'm thinking, I'm actually, I believe that everything happens for a reason. And his coming down with strep sucks for sure. Yeah. But I'm also excited for the potential for an interview solo with him so that we can talk about the show from his perspective and people can listen to both, because founders of a service or a show or a product, they have really different reasons for coming to the table. But the outcomes and the goals may be really, really similar. So yeah. I'm looking forward to that conversation.
We'll get him on for you.
For
We'll
sure.
get him on.
Cory, this has been such a pleasure. I knew it would be. We have such similar outlooks when it comes to that emotional connection to nurturing and serving. And I just really appreciate your time today.
Well, Sarah, thanks for giving me the opportunity. I love conversations like this. We need to be having more of them. I hope people will visit Eat Your Feelings. I hope that we can offer them something that maybe is missing in their life, or just something that just helps make their day a little better. At the very least, they can learn how to cook some really good stuff.
Yes. So listeners, the links to Eat Your Feelings and to connect with Cory or Sam will be in the show notes associated with this episode at elkinsconsulting.com. And listeners, now it's your turn. Cory mentioned that there was a point in his career where he hit a level of success where he knew that there was something more out there. And he chose to serve. And he didn't even know what that would look like at the time, but he came up with this idea and almost didn't activate on it until somebody said, get off your ass and do something. Stop talking about it and do something. Now, you know, listeners, that I'm a Gallup Certified StrengthsFinder coach. And one of the things that I've found by using any kind of assessment tool is that we need to surround ourselves with people who have different talents than we have for exactly this reason. Everyone who is quiet and talks a lot about things and does a lot of research has a best friend or a partner that activates them, that says, we're going to go get out of the house, come with me. I'm going to go do this, come with me. And each of us that has more of the action behind us, we need those friends that do the research first and help us set up for success. So I encourage you, look for your personal board of directors, those people that will help you take action or help you think through before you take action. Those people who are get shit done people, and those people who are ideators and big picture and lovingly relationship building people. We need each other, and this is a perfect example. Thanks for listening.
Smile, what's the use of crying? You'll find that life is still worthwhile if you just smile.